Um, Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, FCDI. It's definitely a privilege to be on this platform and share our work. Um, I want to begin by introducing Opolis. O in Japanese means respect, and polis means the built environment, and we call us as Opolis because whatever we build should be with respect to the built environment. And that's my team. We are a group of 15 very enthusiastic young architects, and it's all teamwork in the studio. Um, we do a range of projects, right from 400 square feet interiors to 4 lakh square feet museums. And let me share a bit of that work with you today. So when we think about architecture, images come into our mind. Many of these are connected with our training and work as an architect. They contain professional knowledge about architecture that we have gathered over years. Some of the other images have to do with our childhood memories or our travels, or sometimes even a combination and beautiful layering of all of the above. Architecture is surely the sum of all our past experiences. If we look at our projects in the last 16 years, I think each project really has a story to tell. And if you look deeper, it's really sometimes it's about the site, and the narrative comes about from the site. Sometimes it's about a client who really wants to be the architect and is really demanding, and the whole narrative is built about around the client. Sometimes it's about the competitions that we participated in our studio. A lot of our work is through competitions, and they have a completely different pace that we work with. And what I like the most are the projects which are really for the heart, that I call the narrative of the architect, which we enjoy doing in the studio. So I'm going to go through the presentation along these lines. The presence of certain buildings on a certain site has something secret about it. They seem simply to be there. We do not pay any special attention to them, and yet it is impossible to imagine that place where they stand without them. They appear anchored in the ground. They make the impression of being a self-evident part of the surroundings, and they seem to be saying, I am as you see me, and I belong here. The most important part of most of our projects begin with the siting of the building on the site, and some projects are just made to emerge from the site. But the process to achieve this is quite exhaustive. Even though it just feels that it just fits there, it's done through a lot of sketches and drawings and models. Unfortunately, the robots don't do the models for us, but they're, like Robert spoke yesterday, but they're done by hand in the office still. We do not claim to know what space really is. The longer we think about it, the more mysterious it becomes. About one thing, however, we are sure: when we as architects are concerned with space, we are concerned with but a tiny part of the infinity that surrounds the earth. And yet each and every building marks a unique place in this infinity. Buildings that have a strong impact always convey an intense feeling of their spatial quality. They embrace the mysterious void called space in a very special way and make it vibrate. We believe that buildings can only be accepted by their surroundings if they have the ability to appeal to our emotions and minds in various ways. At the moment of its creation, architecture is bound to the present in a very special way. It reflects the spirit of its inventor and gives its own answers to the questions of our time through its functional form and appearance, its relationship with other works of architecture, and the place where it stands. We appeal for a kind of architecture of common sense based on fundamentals that we still know, understand, and feel. We carefully observe the concrete appearance of the world, and in our buildings, we try to enhance what seems to be valuable, to correct what is disturbing, and to create anew what we feel is missing. And just an observation, I don't know why we as architects really love taking photographs of all our buildings without people in it, when actually, as Robert said, it's really the people whom we are designing for. And when you observe kids, kids with their inquisitiveness occupy space in the most creative way than what we have ever imagined how our buildings are going to be used. And through this emerges a complete new notion of space making. It's like some painters transform the sun into a yellow spot, while others transform a yellow spot into the sun. We believe that architecture is best when it is an honest expression of the people and the institutions it serves, when it interacts gracefully with its surroundings, and when it has an understated dignity based on being true to location and project requirement. It must be rooted in time and site and client needs, but it must transcend time, site, and client needs. Sometimes the client really comes with demands which you have to kind of cater to, and this is for a client from Mumbai, but has his roots in Rajasthan, and came to us with saying that I want a home which has the essence of Rajasthan in it. We believe that architecture today needs to reflect on the tasks and possibilities which are inherently its own. Architecture is not a vehicle or a symbol for things that do not belong to its essence. In a society that celebrates the inessential, architecture can put up a resistance, counteract the waste of forms and meanings, and speak its own language. The language of architecture is not a question of a specific style. Every building is built for a specific use, in a specific place, and for a specific society. Our buildings try to answer the questions that emerge from these simple facts as precisely and as critically as they can. The strength of a good design lies in ourselves and in our ability to perceive the world with both emotion and reason. A good architectural design is sensuous. A good architectural design is intelligent. The next is a project for a client who came to us with a very small, tight plot in Pune, the Symbiosis Institute, and wanted to make a campus for English language, as well as a hostel block for about 300 girls. And what we thought was, how do you utilize the site? I mean, it's not only about understanding the site is not enough. The art of design requires the ability to interpret the meaning of the brief by linking it to the underlying opportunities that the site has to offer. Making a liability into the asset could be a key. So what we did was took the first 3 floors of the program and made the campus on the first 3 floors and layered the building horizontally instead of making 2 different vertical towers, and put the hostel block on the top 6 floors above the first 3 floors. And so the building was layered in section, and thanks to the changing light, the immobility of the building suddenly comes to life. It creates the emotion and sees the different hues throughout the day. The play of fenestrations for each classroom was worked out, and that becomes the outer skin of the building. One of the most common problems in teaching and practicing architecture today is the general difficulty encountered in deciding on our formal preferences, and we often find ourselves hard-pressed to say why our design has come to assume this particular form rather than another. But when it has gone through the process of decoding a brief and being true to the function, as we just saw, it can be understood why. Next is about competitions. We do a lot of competitions in the studio, and we have won some, we have lost some. The excitement of working with the deadlines and timelines and the juries, and the whole energy in the studio is completely different when we are working on a competition. Well, winning and then not getting in built is also another experience, but we've been fortunate to win one, and completed the Bihar Museum, which we did with Mr. Maki, and that got completed just last year. What started as a undergrad thesis at CEPT in 1996, where I was interested in looking at Japanese architecture, and that was my first encounter with Japan, and met Mr. Maki for the first time to interview him for my thesis, kind of led me to go and work for him in his office after my master's. And then later, after we came back, and in 2012, when this competition was announced, we asked if we could collaborate with them. And we worked as a team together for the competition of the Bihar Museum. And we won that competition. And it's really always amazes me how you really look back and connect the dots, as Steve Jobs says. It's really not, you cannot really imagine and foresee what you are getting into, but when you look back very beautifully, the dots connect. These are a few images of the Bihar Museum. It's completed, and I wish all of you kind of make a trip to Patna to see it. It sits on a plot of 13.5 acres, and it's about 2.5 lakh square feet of built project. The idea was to create a campus feel rather than a very high-rise, iconic structure, mainly because in the competition they had told us about the 4-year timeline that it needed to be completed in. And that's how it sits on Bailey Road in Patna. Some more images of the entrance. Okay, I'm rushing through because he's already given me a 5-minute. I just started. Okay, so these are some more images of the museum. Actually, what really has been fascinating is the construction. It was like a war zone for the last 4 years. I mean, the whole museum site was a fantastic kind of 10 buildings coming up together. And these are the moments you really never can get them back. These are the moments only photographs have captured, and these are most exciting moments that we have. But when the building is completed and you look back and the exhibition designer comes and occupies this exact same, this space, which is like really, really exciting, kind of comes and gets occupied in a very different way by the exhibition designer. And it completely changes how you imagined and what happens. Some more images of the museum. The time frame of this museum was 4 years, and it was absolutely a fascinating journey that we started and completed it in 4 years. The architectural bit is complete. Exhibition design is still going on for a few galleries. And just to compare scales in our studio, there was a weekend home we started about the same time in Panchete, and it took exactly 4 years to complete that weekend home too. So it's just these scales in the office that's nice. And then these are the projects for literally for the soul of the architect. I mean, building in beautiful sites, building something out of nothing, the whole process that one goes through in the studio, and then the process of construction, which is kind of most challenging, frustrating, demanding phase of a project. But finally, when it's built, it all seems very worth it. As architects, we really like to believe that we are the ones who create and translate people's dreams into reality, and we are fortunate to be in that profession. What is most important to us at Opolis is the act of subtraction. For us, creativity is subtraction rather than addition, removing the unnecessary, and at every stage really asking yourself, is this necessary? I mean, I think even in life, we keep asking ourselves whenever you are in a conflict, is this necessary? Often the most beautiful and complex solutions are the simplest. The mental satisfaction of simplicity is probably linked to the physiological and peripheral preferences rooted within us. In an architectural scheme, both in plan and section, this simplicity will not come to us from the beef. It is the product of patient research and persistent process that leads you to it. The dividing line between banality and simplicity is blurred. All said and done, the client or the end user is the most important, and we strive hard to create these moments for them. I do not have pictures with people, and that's why I've done this, but I'm going to go back, as Robert said, go back and look at how it's getting used and get pictures with people in it. Architecture is not about just the expression of the architect's own interests and ideas. It must give satisfaction to the investors, users, visitors, and society at large. Every aspect of design is questioned and revisited to evaluate its need. This involves a sipping down process, a very conscious effort, and ultimately culminates in giving simplest solutions to a very complex design issue. What we call a good design is one which achieves integrity. This is unity or wholeness in balanced relation to the environment. A profound design process eventually makes the patron, the architect, and every occasional visitor in the building a slightly better human being. This is what Juhani Palasma recently said. It's also not about only the ideas, but it's about making these ideas happen. And it almost seems impossible till it's actually done. And sometimes there's some nice beauty in imperfection too, so it's not always required to strive for perfection in every project. The design process is based on a constant interplay of feeling and reason. The feelings, preferences, longings, and desires that emerge and demand to be given a form must be controlled by critical powers of reasoning, but it is our feeling that tell us whether these abstract considerations really ring true. Architecture is always concrete matter. It is not abstract, but concrete. A plan, a project drawn on paper is not architecture, but merely more or less inadequate representation of architecture, comparable to sheet music. Music needs to be performed, and architecture needs to be executed. Thinking in images when designing is always directed towards the whole. By its very nature, the image is always the whole of the imagined reality. Wall and the floor, ceiling and materials, the moods of light and color of a room, for example. And also, we see all these details of the transition from the floor to the wall and from the wall to the window as if we are watching a film. All design work starts from the premise of this physical object, from this physical objective sensuousness of architecture, of its materials. To experience architecture in a concrete way means to touch, see, hear, and smell it. These add life to a building. Every building has a life, it has an energy, it has an aura, it has a soul that we strive to achieve. And I believe you can achieve this only when you, as an architect, are a happy soul. And this is something I just love doing every year, going up to the Himalayas or going down scuba diving. And I truly believe that routine stunts your creativity, and doing these kind of things really helps my creativity. I would like to end with a quote from Mr. Maki that he wrote to Rahul and me. And he said, "Be slow and steady. Life is long." And we as architects really have this fortunate advantage of being called young even at the age of 40. Thank you.